Hello and welcome to the Footballing Podcast, To The Point, with me, Sam, and as always, Matt, a youth coach in Canada. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good, very good. How's yourself?
I'm very good as can be whilst we're in lockdown. We are joined today on the podcast by a very special guest, Barry Morrison, who is the head coach of the Fredricton District Soccer Association. How's it going, Barry? You okay?
I'm doing great, yeah. Thanks for having me on today.
No worries. Thanks for joining us. And thank you to you at home or wherever you are listening to this podcast. We appreciate your support. And let's get started. So, just want to sort of kick things off this episode, by just talking about some of the things that are going on at the moment in the footballing world. As we all know, these are very testing times for players and clubs. I just want to do a shout out, first of all, to Hibernian Football Club, a Scottish football club in the Premier League in Scotland. They this week have announced on their home shirts that they're going to put the message "Thank you NHS" as their sponsor for home games, which I thought was an amazing thing to do, really. Matt, can you hear me?
I'm having connection issues, I think. I can hear you, but everything's lagging.
Okay.
We'll endure it.
So, Matt, is there anything that you sort of wanted to point out this week from the footballing world, something that you've seen that has sort of made you?
This week I want to point out the fact that there's a team in Wales called Real FC, RHYL, and they're one of the first clubs to announce that they're going bankrupt because of COVID-19. Their fans have set up an GoFundMe page to try and raise at least £20,000 just so they can keep operating costs going. And it's really sad to see a team like that going bust when there's so much wealth in England in football, especially at the top levels of the game. And it just isn't being dispersed fairly, I think, in this current climate. And we've shared on our Twitter and our Facebook their GoFundMe pages, because it's now up to the fans to chip in whatever they can. If 20,000 people chipped in £1, they've reached their target. So let's do it for the club, because it's so sad to see a club go out of business.
And even if you can't afford to put anything into the pot, just retweet, share, like it, because that helps as well. It gets the awareness out there. And as a footballing community, we all need to come together in these tough times. And it's just a really important thing for you to do. So please, if you have the time, please do that for us. Just moving on to sort of the money side of things. I mean, then you've got the juxtaposition of players like Mesut Ozil, who this week refused to take a 12.5% pay cut. Most of the Arsenal squad actually elected to do that, but he was one of the ones that chose not to do that.
Hey, he's their highest paid player as well. Oh, he's on 350 grand a week, I think. It's something like he's in the region of 15 million a year as his salary, and he's refused to take a 12.5% pay cut to help the club and the non-playing staff at the club, like match day staff, those that are really at the bottom end of the pay scale at the club. And he's refused to take a 12.5% pay cut. Like, it's not right. Barry? What do you think of all these high-profile players not wanting to help out, like the lesser paid people at their clubs?
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece, isn't it? Because a football club, particularly the major ones in Europe, have such a disparity in earnings and in who's who around the club. So, no, I think this is a scenario where across the board, everyone needs to be doing their part to help each other through this COVID piece. And I mean, we're seeing people here helping each other in many, many different ways. Sometimes it's pay cuts. Sometimes it's just trying to buy something extra from the little store down the street, right? You buy an extra carton of milk from the locally owned shop. So yeah, it's a shame when you see people in the position of a Mesut Ozil not contributing to helping out where he can, right? I mean, that's a disappointment. I know that he made a $10,000 donation to charity this week, but is that kind of coming on par with things? You have to ask some of those questions, I think.
I mean, just to play devil's advocate, are we focusing on football players who do earn high amounts? Are we going out of our way to demonise them when there are other players in the financial world that earn, you would say, a hell of a lot more than football players, and they don't seem to be being as demonised as much? Is it crucial that football players do play their part?
It's crucial that football players play their part, I think, for their community, as in their football family. So the match day staff at the ground, because without those staff, there wouldn't be an Arsenal Football Club. So the players owe the match day staff something, and as the bottom earners at the club, and they're the first to be laid off, a lot of the players have it in their resources to help out in this situation. They just do. And I from personal conversations I've had with you, Sam, that I've gone out and I have hashtagged people from every industry in this that have decided not to play their part. Jeff Bezos being one of them. Daniel Levy, well, he's in football, but Richard Branson. There's so many people in the world at the moment that have a silly amount of wealth that aren't paying their way when they can help. Anyway, that's getting away from football. Let's bring it back to football. Let's go to a good story. So this Barcelona, and these were one of the first clubs to do anything about COVID-19, agreed a 70% wage cut. And that did include the likes of Lionel Messi, who is like the highest earner on the planet. And they agreed that pretty swiftly and without any, protests from the players for it either. And it meant that the club could keep on running. It meant that non-playing staff could keep on getting paid without the worry of like paying for bills and, putting food on the table. And that was a really good thing to do.
But the question has to be, why is it that a club like Barcelona and clubs in this country, in England, are struggling to get to that moral justification as quickly as clubs like Barcelona? Is it a cultural thing? Is it something within the sort of the English culture that doesn't allow us to get to that sort of moral justification before then?
I don't know what the justification is at all, because there's even delusional pundits and columnists talking about Gary Neville's been an advocate for ages, saying that players shouldn't take pay cuts, and any clubs that give their players pay cuts should be banned from the transfer window. And then Roy Keane just yesterday was saying that they shouldn't be player pay cuts either. And I'm just like, what are you guys on? Where's this coming from? And all I can come down to is it's wealth privilege. It's got to be. But they're coming from a place where they have money, and they just feel like they don't need to. In this circumstances, they feel like they shouldn't have to help, and I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Barry, do you think that it is just wealth privilege, or do you think that it could be that they're coming from a player's perspective, and that a footballer's career is short, so that they have to protect themselves because in the future there's no guarantee that they could work again? They might get an injury or something or other. I know in the modern era there are lots of different ways to make revenue now as a post player, but is that the case? Is it just wealth privilege, or is it that they're just trying to protect their future?
Look, one of the lines I've been using a lot is we've got to give people a little bit of slack here. This is most people's first pandemic, the first time we've been through this idea of so much change in our society so quickly, and so much economic challenge placed on everybody so quickly. And I don't think anybody really knows how to react or is really sure what the right response is, right? Everybody knows what we need to do is we need to cut our expenses. We need to, tighten the ship, no matter what sort of business you are. If you're the local restaurant down the street, if you're Barcelona Football Club, you've got to make some form of concession so you can keep running and keep operating. Without our key revenue streams for most businesses, we're in trouble, right? I think when you look at the Barcelona example, I think that's definitely cultural. I don't know that it's a difference between Spanish culture and English culture, but I think it's definitely something to do with the fabric and the culture of Barcelona Football Club and how they see themselves as part of the community, right? And how they instill within their playing staff even that they're part of that greater community. So when you see that, I think that what you see is you see a football club that's bigger than just their on-field product. And it's nice when it's a club that has such a nice on-field product at the same time. So it's good for them.
Fantastic. And just moving to the other end of the spectrum in terms of clubs, we have clubs in England at the moment that are saying that they're going to go out of business if this continues. One example of that is Accrington Stanley, a very famous club in this country. They're in the lower league, so they're in League One, which is the third division essentially, and they have said this week that they are going to go bust if the season doesn't continue and they get their home ticket revenue. But it's that kind of moving on to that cultural side. The owner actually has a firm that funds the club that is now making PPE, personal protective equipment, for the NHS. So he's got the financial situation to think about, but also he has that moral dilemma as well, where he obviously wants to help his country, wants to help the NHS. It's an institution over here, and it's nice to see that, but we don't want to see clubs like Accrington Stanley go out of business.
No, we don't, because everyone remembers the advert, don't they? Accrington Stanley, really?
It's completely lost on you, Barry, isn't it?
Totally, that's like way up here on me.
I think you can find it.
But anyway,
I'll look it up.
Yeah. Accrington's but the sad thing with Accrington Stanley is they want to continue the season, but they've said that there's three scenarios here, isn't there? There's don't complete the season at all, they go bust. Complete the season but behind closed doors, they go bust. And complete the season and let the fans in and they'll just about survive. And that last one just isn't going to happen at all. And it is a very scary time. And the reason they're going to go bust if they don't get it for option number 2 is because they said that it's going to cost them £500,000 in that time frame. And they just, without that match day revenue, even though they're playing football, they're just not going to be able to endure that without taking massive financial hits. And because of the TV revenue that's so uneven in England as well, there's barely any TV revenue coming in for the likes of Accrington Stanley for them to keep afloat. And I think Gary Neville touched on this yesterday in a Sky Sports report, where he said he thinks the Premier League needs to start drawing up a deal so money can filter in this time. Money can filter down. He said even the Premier League taking out a loan with a major bank just so they can filter some more money down to the Football League, so Football League clubs can stay afloat. He says it's the responsibility for the Premier League to keep football going, and I completely agree with that. Considering that Gary Neville's stance on players is for them not to take cuts, but now he wants the Premier League to fund the rest of the Football League. He's a bit delusional. He's a bit delusional in his way of thinking, but
it's just
I agreed with that point.
Well, it's the hypocrisy behind it. I think with Gary Neville looks after Gary Neville and his brand. And if it suits his brand, if it suits his way of thinking.
What brand's that? Goal right back, rubbish coach, talk rubbish pundit.
He is do you know what? In Manchester, I live in Manchester, he is a very influential businessman, and he is doing a lot of building in Manchester at the moment. He's got his own hotel here. He employs a lot of people, and he is definitely building himself a sort of an empire after his footballing days. But that's a completely different podcast. Barry, just to bring it back to you, the CPL, Canada's sort of first Premier Division, would be going into its second season now. So what's the feeling in Canada at the moment with it sort of being suspended, and will it be able to continue after this?
I mean, I think in Canada right now, that's becoming more and more the question that everybody's asking. We've seen the first 3 or 4 provinces have now released kind of their return to normalcy plans or return to normal plans. And sport isn't really front and center in any of them. It's kind of pushed to the back, little footnotes. We're still waiting for information from everybody. So, I mean, it's a very real possibility right now that the CPL doesn't get to play their second season, and they're waiting till season 3 before they get to step on the field again.
But if there isn't a season 2, will there be a season 3?
Yeah, and you know what? It's been interesting. The CPL owners have been very quiet on this. There haven't been an outcry of these are the struggles we're going to go through because of this. And I wonder where, with the CPL in comparison to many other professional soccer leagues, if part of it is their playing staff budget or their game day even staff budget versus their travel budgets. Like, if they don't have to travel all over the country, they're saving a lot more money than many clubs and in many sports or many leagues in other parts of the world. So I wonder if that might be the saving grace, is that by actually not playing the games, they're getting a bit of reprieve at this point in their in their league.
That's a great point.
That
is a great point.
It's a great point. And also, just on the side of the CPL as well, soccer is obviously starting to come to the forefront in Canada because of the impending World Cup in 2026. This has surely got to take a hit in the sort of the popularisation of soccer in Canada, and the development of youth players that would then ultimately go on to play in the World Cup.
Yeah, no question. I mean, one of the bigger concerns is just like the generation of 4 and 6 year olds that aren't going to get their first or second summer of soccer, and whether or not that creates gaps down the road, and what else people start to take on. We know in Canada, or it appears in Canada at this point, that some sports will be able to start in the near future, but team and contact sports, where soccer is going to fit in, is going to be down the road. So, will this inspire, young soccer players to take on another sport or to pick up another hobby? I don't know. The implications at this point are unknown. So that's going to be role of soccer organizations to keep connected with their athletes and their coaches and the people that are involved, and figure out creative ways to gather around the sport of soccer without the sport of soccer, maybe specifically there. We're going to all have to dig into our collective toolboxes to figure out what that might look like.
Absolutely. So what would you say, Barry, to the CPL right now, who you say are keeping very quiet on this? What would you say to them to sort of keep this going, to keep soccer in the forefront of people's minds, and to keep the development of soccer on a nice steady stream upwards during these times?
Yeah, I hope they can take this as an opportunity to get out and connect with their communities and their broader communities. And for example, here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, our closest CPL franchise is Halifax. It's about a 4-hour drive away. But can a club like Halifax be trying to connect with a community in New Brunswick, the neighboring province, an area where they might be able to build a fan base or inspire the next generation of player? Could they come and do some visits? Could they, have players spend a little bit of time on Zoom calls with local players here in New Brunswick? And what could that do for the game? And how could that help connect our professional game to our youth game here? In Canada, our system doesn't flow quite as smoothly yet as the European system. We still have some disconnects between the local community clubs and the professional clubs. And this is a great opportunity when they're not on the field and when they don't have those same constraints of having to train and play every day. There's a real opportunity here for them to connect with the grassroots and the kids who are coming up, idolizing them, and maybe inspire that next generation.
Absolutely. So just moving on to your role within the FDSA, just explain to our listeners sort of what it is that you do. What is your role?
So I'm the club head coach with the FDSA, the Fredricton District Soccer Association. So my role primarily revolves around working with our coaches and players. So coaching development, player development. I do a lot of our kind of programming side of things, and work on that. Obviously, I spend a lot of time on the soccer field, playing and having a lot of fun.
Good stuff. And so, what was the initial response to this COVID-19 situation as a club?
Yeah. So, the initial response was, at the first go, nobody had any idea what was going to happen or how long this was going to be. We just knew that we were being told not to play soccer for a few weeks. So, our first response was, okay, our next set of tryouts was our next kind of thing starting up. That's 4 weeks away. Maybe we'll have to push that back a week, or maybe we'll start on time. We don't know yet. And that was going to be the beginning of April. So we started to build out, okay, what does it look like? How do we push things back? How do we change registration dates? And over the next few weeks, we realized more and more kind of how massive this was going to be. And then we started to build out plans for what would be the last day we could start a summer soccer program, and have it run for any reasonable length of time for participants, or how do we prepare ourselves to start a program on a week or 2 or 3 weeks notice, when people right now are worried about many other things, right? We've got many people worried about jobs, job security, income, what they're going to be doing. And we've got to figure out how to, be nimble, be adaptable, and offer a soccer experience for kids at the drop of a hat. So we've been playing around and just kind of constantly working at that, tweaking that, talking to people to find out, what's the latest news they understand, or how are they seeing things, or what are they doing creatively in order to try and support the players and coaches and families involved in their organization. Yeah. That
kind of leads into the second question that I had. So what is, since COVID-19 started, what's your daily routine now as a head coach of the club compared to what it was before? Like, how have you had to approach being the head coach of a club from being at home?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, man, and something that we've seen lots of different kind of takes on. So for me, it's been, this is where it's been important to try and stay on top of what's happening with sport and with COVID. So I've been working really hard to connect with coaches from across New Brunswick, across Canada, find out how they're dealing with things. What are some of the things that they're doing, help their clubs? What does that look like or feel like for them? What are kind of creative ways for us to be involved, right? And then there's kind of this onslaught of content that hit the internet as soon as COVID kind of took off. Is everyone's got a personal individual training program you can pay for. Everyone's got a mental skills sessions you can pay for. Everyone's got coach education you can pay for. So some of it's been trying to navigate through that and help some of the players understand where they might find value. And then it's been kind of the constant check back with what might our programming look like, or how might we design our programming, or how might our programming change. And that's kind of updating on a weekly or every 2 weeks kind of basis, we're going, okay, we may not be able to get that in, but we might change this, or how are we going to ensure that people come back and have a good place to play that they can afford, So we've been playing a lot with that and following updates on COVID. So COVID's taken over a lot of that time, just trying to understand it and wrap my head around it, and what it's going to mean for our return to play.
It really is a trying time, and a lot of people adapting as quickly as possible to try and keep some level of normality, but there's not going to be the same normality for a great period of time. So as you said, FDSA is a youth setup, and obviously it relies a lot on player membership to keep surviving and sponsorship. So during this time where programs aren't running, is the FDSA doing anything to fundraise or to try and keep some form of income flowing through the club, like raffles or any quizzes or anything that's going on?
Yeah, so in terms of revenue through the club at this point, that hasn't been the main priority. Some of the main priorities have just been finding ways to continue to connect with players. So we've had a couple of people who have been involved coaching and doing different work with us. A guy named Marcus Lees has been kind of trying to keep our social media active and keep the kids challenged with some of his whether it be dribbling tricks or little games, so that we've engaged kids a little bit that way. We've shared opportunities for kids with some different online training platforms to give them a bit of opportunity there. For the most part, we've kind of looked and said, this is a really good opportunity for us to take a step back and give the families and the kids some breathing room. Oftentimes they're playing soccer 10, 11 months a year and haven't had family dinners and haven't had some of the luxuries that other families get when they're not so involved. But I think that as we head into kind of the May, June, July months, it'll become more and more important for us to start to be building those connections through traditional summertime areas where they would be at soccer and they would be doing more things. We're going to have to get a little bit more active on that side of things.
So is there anything that the general public in the Fredricton area or further afield can do to sort of support you as a club in this time?
Yeah, I mean, just keep soccer on the radar. Just recognize that that we're working hard to make sure that we can get soccer going quickly and responsibly as restrictions continue to be relaxed and we have more opportunity to know what our seasons might look like. So just kind of keep an eye, keep in touch, share with us, keep involved, let us know how you're doing, and we're going to do our best to make sure that we've got a great opportunity for you to get back on the field.
And just what are the long-term implications that COVID could present to you as a club and to the game?
Yeah. I mean, the timing for this in many ways couldn't be more difficult. It's between seasons for us, so players aren't really in a regular team structure with coaches and all of those things. It's a little bit loose. So, there's certain points of the connection that are difficult. So as we return, recognizing how many people will return, will we have regular registration numbers? How will those numbers carry forward till next year? Will people kind of not, some of our earlier in their involvement, our under 8, under 10 kids, will they not have soccer this summer? Realize, oh, look, we enjoyed a couple extra days on the golf course or a couple extra weekends camping and choose to spend their summer other ways. I mean, we really don't know. The implications could be anything at this point. I mean, we've also run scenarios where soccer can start again and people are so keen to get out of the house and running around and get some exercise that our numbers are bigger than we're used to. So we really don't know whether it's a positive or a negative or where things are going to fall out.
It's just everything, like we said earlier, everything's a massive unknown at the moment. So last question then. Do you see a date in mind where you think you might be able to return to the field, or is it just such an unknown that you just can't do anything about it?
Oh, Matt, I mean, that's the $1 million question. And for those not in New Brunswick kind of released their return to normal plan, I guess, yesterday, or released the initial bones of it. And sport were not in the early phases of the return to normal.
It was phase 3 and phase 4, wasn't it? Or yeah.
Yeah. So, what that tells me, frankly, is that we're very unlikely to see soccer in May or June this year. You can read into it from one side and say, oh, we might not see soccer until even later than that. But I think when we read into it from the other side, what we need to recognize is that if things continue to go well and we continue on a positive path, particularly in New Brunswick, we'll be able to see some return to play relatively soon. I think we just need to see what's happening in some other places. I think New Zealand will have a return to sport sometime, it looks like, in May or June. I'm going to just guess. If we get to watch what happens there over a month or two, we may be able to follow suit once we recognize that it's safe, or once we recognize similarities between what's going on there and here. But yeah, in terms of a date, if you asked me a month ago, I would have said August. If you asked me a week ago, I would have said June. If you ask me today, I'm saying, I really have no idea. I'm just trying to make sure that when it does happen, we're not surprised. You know what I mean? And
it's got bags of balls by the door, ready to go in mass.
At all times, Matt. Always got a bag of balls ready to go at all times.
Well, talking about getting back to sport. Talking about getting back to sport, Bundesliga in Germany is due to go back on the 9th of May. And I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to become a German football fan, because I wouldn't have watched football for so long by that point. I'm going to be very keen on watching a lot of German football. So it's good to see that other countries are, getting sort of a plan in place. I mean, I live in the UK, and it's very frustrating, the sort of coverage that we're getting and what our government are doing. It seems that we have been slow to do everything that could be possibly done. From an outsider looking into the New Brunswick sort of situation, it feels like you guys have actually done a phenomenal job in getting things under control. Matt keeps me updated daily about what's going on over there. So it sounds like your province has done an amazing job. It is really frustrating from someone who lives in England to see things opening back up around the world, but it's also good as well. It gives you sort of hope and optimism.
Well, we were pretty proactive as a province getting out in front of the spread of this thing. And one of the big things they wanted to do to make sure that the province stayed that way is, even though we're putting in this phased response to normality, the borders are going to be kept shut to this province, which is will hopefully keep things being able to open up, because our neighbouring provinces of Nova Scotia and Quebec, they're not doing so well with this. Right. So, yeah, keeping the borders shut will help us as a community get back to normality, and will help us get back to the soccer field. So if we can just keep this as a New Brunswick thing at the moment, and just keep on thinking about our New Brunswick community and everything that's inside that, we should be able to get back sooner rather than later than some of our surrounding provinces.
It's good. It's good. So Barry, just to sort of wrap things off, I just want to sort of ask you a bit about your sort of footballing past. How did you get into soccer? What was sort of your first footsteps into it?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a Canadian kid, born and raised. My parents were Canadian, their parents were Canadian. So obviously, soccer was something that kind of was blowing up when I was young in the '80s. And I'll tell you how I got into soccer is actually my cousin came over to the house one day after a soccer game, and I really liked his soccer shirt. And I said, why do you get that? Well, this is my soccer shirt. I get this when I go to play soccer. And I said to my parents, well, I want to play soccer then. I like that shirt. I want to wear one of those shirts. I mean, it wasn't a special shirt. It was like a, striped no-name jersey with the number 6 on the back. But for whatever reason, as a 6-year-old in New Brunswick, I thought that was the coolest thing ever, and I wanted that. So I was the oldest of 3 and started our family down the soccer pathway. So from there, I played growing up. I decided I wanted to kind of play more competitively, so I went and found places to play and ways to do it. I played on our provincial select squads here growing up as I was coming through the system, and late in high school had a few injuries and took on coaching. So I took on coaching at about 16. Still playing and coaching and doing those things, but really developed a passion for the coaching side of it. So, really took to coaching seriously about 19 years old, and focused my university education on that, and pursued further education after university with a high-performance coaching diploma. And then I had the opportunity. I've worked and coached in BC. I've worked and coached in Alberta, and then was able to come back to New Brunswick and Fredricton, which has always been home for me. So able to be here and work for the club that I started playing and started coaching for is really a pretty cool thing. I've had the opportunity to coach at the college university level all across the country as well, which was lots of fun. And yeah, just kind of sunk myself into it, and enough hours of anything, you learn a couple things, and have done my best to pass that on.
So if the opportunity ever came up to go and do 3 months coaching in the UK, would you take it up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a critical thing to continue to expand your horizons, right? Like, you need to see, and you need to explore and find new things. So, I mean, Matt, for sure, I see stuff like that as being objectives or goals for the future, right? Making sure that whatever we need to have done here, the local club can be covered off, but having an opportunity to learn and bring new information back here is incredibly valuable.
And is there a certain club in the UK that you sort of, you'd like to be involved with, or you've followed through your time?
He does. The Scummy Club.
I'll take the beating on it. I'm a Chelsea supporter. I mean, it goes back. It's well pre-Abramovich, well pre-Mourinho, and all of those scenarios. Back when we were just a posh West London club, just a normal posh West London club. I was great with it. But look, I think there's many clubs that are doing great work all across England, and some of them aren't professional clubs. There's great grassroots organizations, and there's great second or third division clubs that are doing great work within their academy programs. So really being exposed to any of that's a value to me. We were lucky and took a group of kids over to Bolton and spent a few days with the Bolton Wanderers about 3 years ago. And I mean, they're a small club financially. Every year they're hoping that they can come out of it, doing all right. But they've got a nice academy set up. They've got a great group of young coaches who are kind of learning and growing within the game. And there's lots to take from that environment as well. So, I think that anything for me would be great learning and a great opportunity to interact with other coaches.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today, Barry. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and speak with you, and find out your feelings on the whole situation that we're currently going under. It's just a great experience to speak to coaches and to have that dialogue and that conversation. So thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
Oh, thanks for including me. I follow along with your podcasts every week, Matt, kind of Well, I guess it has been every week lately, but Matt alerted me to them last year, and I've been kind of following along ever since. So it's great to have a chance to be involved and chat with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Barry. And in the future, we'd love to have you back on again.
Anytime.
Great. Well, that's all for this week. So I just want to thank everyone for listening on your favourite podcast platform. Please do go and check us out on our social media pages. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We now have a YouTube page as well where we're putting up the video versions of these podcasts. So you get to see us in the flesh. And also go and check out our Facebook page as well. And we want you to get in contact with us if you have any comments or anything you want to tell us about the podcast and things that you want to hear about as well. We want to get involved with you guys. We want you guys to get involved in this podcast. So for now, thank you very much again, Barry, for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
And thank you, Matt. And we'll speak again very soon.
See ya.
Take care. Goodbye for now.
Thanks, guys.